Katerina.
Hello.
How you going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Well, we're here today because over the years in the ISA, so many people have stopped me and asked to say, what do the ISA do?
Yeah.
And that's a hard question to answer when there is just so much from A to Z, and you can't burn the ears off someone every time you meet them. So we thought just in the lead up to Christmas that you and I might have a chat from the outreach perspective, just to see what the ISA is all about, give some examples of what we do, and have a bit of a yarn.
Sounds good to me.
So Katrina, we'll start off from the very beginning and just explain to us what is the role of the outreach worker and perhaps how are we funded?
Yeah, so as outreach worker, we tend to provide support and some assistance and guidance to clients. So that can be anything from the very minor stuff like passport issues or visa concerns right through to the more serious things. Our role is part funded by the Irish government, which is fantastic, but we really rely so heavily on donations to keep us going.
Yeah. So what does a typical day look like for the outreach worker?
Oh, good question. I guess in a short answer, there is no typical day. We're a really small team of 4 people. Myself and Clodagh, who's our part-time outreach worker, manage majority of the client cases. So thankfully, we're able to provide a lot of the support over the phone or over email to people, and we try and reserve going out into the community for more of the complex cases.
Like you did today?
Like I did today. Exactly.
On your way here?
Yeah. Some days we could be on the road a lot, like from client to client with really important meetings or appointments, and other days we're very lucky to be able to work from home and provide that support remotely. So in a typical month, we could actually be supporting up to 60 people at one time. A lot of these may be long-term clients, for example, or elderly, or prisoners, and those that have got really complex needs. And then of course we have clients that come in and just need a little bit of support, and we close that off.
Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of people don't know is the workload can be massive. There's a lot of Irish people here and a lot of them need help.
Exactly, a lot of people have really complex needs, and a lot of that goes under the radar in the community as well, and we're so glad to be able to do that work really well and confidentially as well.
So Katrina, what would you say is the best part of the role?
Best part of the role definitely is the variety of the role that this offers here. So in the morning, you never know what you're going to get. Like, you could be assisting someone to access addiction services or dealing with someone in their employment dispute. In the afternoon, we could be attending a really important medical appointment with one of our seniors. And I just think this role, there's so much job satisfaction. You really feel like you're helping the Irish Australian community here.
And Katrina, what would you say is the ISA's biggest achievement?
Terence, I have to say the biggest achievement since I started with the ISA 2 years ago is the introduction of the SOLAS service, which is our mental health support service. So people are still accessing that service weekly in really high numbers. The need is there in the community, so they get to speak to a counsellor or another mental health practitioner. And it's just fantastic because that cultural understanding is there, because they're all Irish born or of Irish heritage. So yeah, that has a huge impact on people, and you can really see the changes in someone from they first access it until they have their final session.
Yeah, I'd say there's a lot of job satisfaction in that, just to see the end product of someone getting the help that they need.
Absolutely, you're following their journey the whole way through, and we regularly check in on them, like, how are you going with your practitioner? Do you feel like they're a good fit? How are you feeling in yourself? And you get to hear them regular updates, so it's fantastic.
So Katrina, for someone out there who's never heard of SOLAS or doesn't know what it is, can you break it down for me a little bit into how it sort of works and how it's funded?
Absolutely. So we were really lucky in the beginning when we first set up the SOLAS service that we got a few generous grants from within the community, but the demand for the service absolutely exceeded our expectations. So now we're actually using our own money that we get from donations and fundraising to continue the service. We're really lucky that we can offer up to 10 sessions to replicate the Medicare model that's offered here for Australians, and we actually do it as heavily subsidised as well, so it's financially very reasonable for people to access.
Now, Katerina, I'm sure you've got plenty of cases, but could you give us an example of how maybe like a case study on someone who's used the services of SOLAS?
Yeah, thankfully we've had so many success stories, but this one particular fella stands out for me. So, young Irish man here, he was working in construction and his mental health had deteriorated that much that he actually was having panic attacks when he was going on to work. He worked in construction. So his colleagues and his friends became really concerned by him, and one of them initially reached out to us about how can we assist, and thankfully we had the SOLAS service available to him. So with his consent we were introduced and I met up with him. Like, everyone's totally unique as well, so with this young man, like, I had to build his trust. So we met up a few times over the space of maybe 2 to 3 weeks. We walked, we talked, we got a coffee. We started to establish what were the key issues in his life. He opened up to me as time went on, and that really helped me match him with an appropriate practitioner within the SOLAS service. So after a few weeks, he went to see Siobhan, one of our SOLAS practitioners, and his life just improved from there. You know, week on week when he was meeting up with her, he was working on things, his confidence grew. She was providing him homework to do within the week to maybe recognise when his anxiety was increasing a little bit, and then he would discuss that with her at the next session. So, you know, he had a few stumbles along the way. None of this just works perfectly as soon as you access it, but he used the full 10 sessions available to him, and it was quite emotional at the end, you know, when he said about how much his life has changed. And we're actually really lucky to have people like him in the community, because he's referred a few of his friends and colleagues to us for other areas of life that they needed support with. But yeah, it was.
I think one of the great things to come out of that was it was his mates that put him forward in the first place. I think it's great that the conversation's out there and people aren't scared to put forward or speak up for a friend that they're worried about.
Absolutely, and look, it's all done totally confidentially, and they tried everything and he tried everything as well, but sometimes you just need that professional support. You know, they had no magic words that were going to make him feel better. And it was such a relief to his parents at home. Like, they seen automatically the changes in him, you know, within a few months. Like, when he'd be calling home, his mood had increased, he'd grown in confidence, and he was really honest with them about the tough times that he'd had.
Wow, brilliant. So Katerina, the whole mental health side of things is one issue, but there's a whole lot of other things. Can you tell me, how are the most vulnerable in the community supported?
Well, a lot of our community are struggling, and you know, that may not always be obvious to their friends, their family, their work colleagues, but we're assisting people from the young, maybe those that have just recently arrived in Australia, to our senior community as well. You know, there's a lot of financial worries out there, there's people at risk of homelessness, there's domestic violence, you know, all the issues that you would expect to be happening, they are happening within our own community as well, and we're really grateful to be able to offer them support. And often when they come to us, they may come with one issue, but once you start to chat and work through that, you realise that there's so many other things happening in the background that are concerning them as well.
Mm-hmm. Peeling back the layers, you find out, the core, can be other things happening.
Absolutely, and that all comes with trust and with time, and that's something that we're really grateful to be able to offer. It's not limited support that we offer. If you need us, we'll be there until you no longer need us.
Yeah, and I think as well, a thing that I think you touched on it there was, just because we're Irish, it doesn't mean to say that we're not susceptible to any sort of trouble that can, or crisis that can happen there, from the domestic violence to all these different topics, just because we're Irish.
Absolutely, just because we're living in Australia and have the sunshine doesn't mean that these problems aren't existing, and for some, they're maybe exasperated because they're so far from home, they're so far from their support network, maybe there's some shame there in reaching out for help as well, and asking for financial assistance, because if you're not an Australian permanent resident or citizen, there's not a lot available to you here.
So Katerina, we talked about peeling back the layers there. Have you, I know you will have, other examples of where there was maybe a few more complexities to a case?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, we had a male client that came to us maybe around 12 months ago, and he was having a legal issue. So what we offer at the ISA is court support, because that can be a really frightening place to go by yourself. So he reached out for that reason. I attended court with him. We started to build that trust. He had a few different court appearances, and within that time frame we got to know each other, and he seemed to be really struggling in other areas of his life. So gradually he was opening up. He had a traumatic childhood experience. He was out here in Australia, in New South Wales by himself. He was really socially isolated. He was struggling with his mental health as well. So I was encouraging them doctor's appointments, and he got referred to a psychologist, which was fantastic, but there seemed to be always something he was holding back.
Mm-hmm.
But again, as we continued in the journey of supporting him, I established that he was having a lot of difficulty within his Department of Housing unit. So I attended a meeting with him at housing and realised that these issues had been ongoing for a number of years due to his mental health and his frustration with the system, and often not understanding how you go about getting things fixed and getting support. It became clear to me that he was having a lot of issues within his home. So he opened up to me that he had no hot water for over 18 months. His toilet didn't flush, so he was actually taking the shower head over his toilet every time he had to use it.
Wow.
His stove was broken, so he was using an air fryer propped up on a chair. And eventually he allowed me to do a home visit, and that was tough, because
confronting for you.
very confronting, because he hadn't been maintaining the home. He was embarrassed. There was a lot of shame there. There was a lot of clutter and what I would probably say is hoarding, which can be quite common for people that are struggling with their mental health, to actually maintain themselves, their own personal care and their home, or one or the other. He was sleeping on his sofa. The 2 bedrooms, they just weren't accessible. So that was really tough, but lots of phone calls, lots of login calls with maintenance, meeting with plumbers, meeting with electricians. We've started to work through that, and he's come a long way now in all areas, and he's actually able to look back and say, wow, in the space of 12 months I've achieved a lot. He's feeling more settled within himself, his mental health is more stable, and we've still got some way to go, but he's doing a great job, and it's really nice for me offering that support to be able to see the changes in his life as well. That smile's getting a little bit bigger every time I meet him.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And with the house then itself, all the maintenance people, was there any decluttering, or how did we kind of tackle that?
Yeah, so with the legal issues, we actually put in for a transfer, but in the short term we wanted him to have access to hot water, so lots of calls with plumbers. Department of Housing, like any kind of system, there's a process. You have to be patient. You have to be on top of the admin, and that's something that he just wasn't able to do at that time. But I was more than happy to be a bit of a pest and make them calls for him.
Good on you. Oh, that's crazy. Like, you wouldn't think that people in our community, we know of other communities, but you wouldn't think people of our community are living like that.
Yeah, I know, it's actually quite difficult to comprehend, isn't it? But yeah, that's just one example of many complex cases. Another one, which is unfortunately quite common for us, is domestic violence. You know, people within our community are victims of domestic and family violence. We actually had a family member reach out to us from Ireland, so the referrals don't just come, you know, within people in New South Wales. They were really concerned for their sister. So she was in a relationship here and had a young daughter, and was in an ongoing custody battle with her ex-partner. So they just wanted to know what support was available to her. So again, we were happy to try and help link her with some legal representation, and we actually provided some court support as well, because, you know, her ex-partner had his family, his friends to lean on, and she had no one. And because of the violence that she experienced, she had actually been ostracized from any friends that she had here throughout that relationship. So we were able to provide that support initially, and once we got over the legal side of it, it was like, what else can we do for you, you know? Because she was struggling, had sole custody, she was trying to maintain her household, pay the bills, working full time, getting her daughter into childcare. So she was just so overwhelmed. And what was great is one of our SOLAS practitioners lives on the west coast in Western Australia. So when she got her daughter down to bed at night, she had regular Zoom support through SOLAS with our practitioner Suzanne over there, and that was brilliant for her at the end of the day to have that quiet time where she could debrief, work through that trauma, and yeah, she's seeing some fantastic results now.
Great. It just goes to show that life still goes on no matter what you're going through. You still have to do the day to day and you know, get the kids up and out and keep your life
you know,
going.
and her little one didn't know any different, so she had to try and be brave and keep going and paint on a smile, even though I'm sure some days she really didn't feel like getting out of bed.
So yeah, the domestic and family violence thing is a thing I know in my own work. I've definitely had, you know, people come forward, you know, that it's a thing, and I suppose COVID would have brought on, you know, or kind of highlighted some more cases there. Absolutely.
What we're hearing is that a lot of cases now that restrictions have ended are coming out like people are needing support because they've been living through this, you know, in their home, and it was easier to hide back then. But yeah, as you say, look, it's always there, and we can link people to supports within New South Wales here. And even in the last 6 months, we've had 2 males reach out that have experienced domestic violence, and I think that's really important to remember that it's not just women and children, it is males as well, and it may not be what you typically think, but they are experiencing it.
So I know you mentioned it briefly, but I guess one of our biggest cohorts of people that we look after is the elderly. Tell me a bit about how we...
Absolutely. Oh, it's great supporting them. So look, within the Irish Support Agency family, regularly every fortnight on a Wednesday, we have our seniors come in to Carrot Club, which is a social club. They play cards, they have sandwiches, drink tea, and a great catch up. And there's also the Silver Surfers in the afternoon for those that want to brush up on their IT skills. And it's fantastic, you know, it's such a brilliant meet-up. But this group isn't representative of our senior community, you know, because they're social, they're getting out there, they're coming in to see us. Like, we have got so many seniors that we're supporting in the background that are socially isolated, maybe for health reasons. They're not able to come into meet-up groups. They are living by themselves, and a lot of them are living in poor conditions. They're living from pension to pension, you know, they don't have a lot of savings for one reason or another. there's quite a few that actually live in boarding houses, which in a way is nice that there's a few of our Irish seniors looking out for each other under the one roof there. But yeah.
I think I remember part of the difficulty was finding them as well, because we know that they're out there. We know statistics tell us that there's lots of people came to Australia from Ireland, and they're here and they're still alive, but we're not sure where they are. And it's a lot of the time we stumble upon them, don't we, in aged care facilities and different places.
Absolutely. We're very fortunate that as the Irish Support Agency becomes well known, that we may actually get a phone call from a social worker saying, I met you 2 months ago with Mary, but you'll not believe it, I found this man, he's never heard of you, or he can't get out of home, is there any way you can help him as well? But the main people that actually are our eyes and ears in the community is them seniors that come into Cara Club. So they're the social ones, but they still keep in touch with maybe a man that they worked with 30-40 years ago, and they say, look, he lives out west, he's got no one, I checked in on him recently, he's not well, can you help us? So it's really good that we have them kind of looking out for each other, it's really nice.
I think it was lovely during COVID as well. We did the ring around as well.
Yes. Yeah, we've great crack now. The staff and the committee and volunteers, we all divvied up our seniors list, and we would regularly do COVID calls to check in. But we were chatting about COVID for 1 minute, and the rest of it was when they came to Australia or what they worked at. And thankfully they were very strict at sticking to the rules, so we didn't have to give out to too many of them.
And I think some of them were saying, oh, you don't need to be calling me, I'm okay, there's many one out there that needs your phone call. And that as well.
Sure, they were all gossiping amongst themselves. So they said, I heard you were ringing such and such yesterday.
News gets around, travels fast.
The news travels fast, yeah.
I suppose the sad side of it as well is, as the population ages and gets older, we lose some of them, and not all of them have the facilities or the means to a respectful burial, or some of them don't even know themselves. And it's a thing that I always was very proud of, to tell people in the ISA that we have our own burial plots. We've got some in Wollongong and some in Rookwood Cemetery, and that's a place where people who maybe find themselves destitute at the end of life, and that the ISA can bury them alongside their Irish brothers and sisters, on a beautiful grave, where we've got lovely Irish headstones and things like that. So it's something that I always was very proud of.
Absolutely. If anyone's ever in the area of the Rookwood Cemetery, I'm sure you'll find our plots very easily within St Patrick's Lawn. It's burying someone with dignity, because if they are destitute, yes, through New South Wales Health, eventually they will have a burial or a cremation, but that could take months. And if someone is known to us, we've got them plots there, and it's so beautiful that they're able to be buried alongside their fellow countrymen and women.
That's beautiful. I think the best way of learning about the ISA and what we do is by the stories and the cases that we've had, and it's been great today talking about some of the cases. Can you give us an example of how the outreach and the ISA help elderly?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the seniors that, due to health reasons, wasn't able to leave the house, he had a friend within the Irish community that reached out to us to check on him, and I went over and done that home visit. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, the aged care system here is an absolute minefield. So they give a lot of control to the person that needs to access the services, which is great that they have the choice of maybe different providers that they want to go with. But this gentleman, very strong Irish accent, very hard of hearing, and refusing to wear his hearing aids. So he would be getting these calls like, you need to make a decision in the next 2 weeks about who you want to come to take you out to do your shopping. And he just didn't have a clue where to start. So that was the first thing that I got on, was making that call to my aged care, getting his approval on the phone, sitting beside me to say, yeah, I want Katerina to speak for me. So I became his authorised representative, which was great because every time I needed to contact them, I didn't have to drive out to his home to have him come on the phone to say, yeah, it's all good. So we got him set up that way, you know, when registering with the provider and working out, he needed some help to medical appointments, and he needed shopping done, and he needed some assistance in cleaning up his unit. And so that was actually very clear to me as well. So once I had that side of things set up, my next biggest concern was the clutter within the unit. Now, he had been bouncing from hospital to home and back to hospital again many times because of falls, and you just could barely see carpet, you know. And because he lived alone, he didn't really have great relationships with the neighbours. They were all younger, and he didn't have anyone checking in on him. So if he had a fall, he could sometimes be there for a few hours.
Wow.
So we decided the ISA would fund a falls alarm for him. So
Awesome, yeah.
if he took a tumble in the bathroom, he just had to press the button and he got through to emergency services. They knew his location, and they would come out and get him. So that was the first thing that we were really proud to fund. The second thing was, as I mentioned, the home wasn't very clean, and it didn't seem to bother him, but it really bothered me. You know, he just got used to living that way. There was a cockroach infestation, so I was just seeing them everywhere, especially all over his kitchen where he had food sitting out. I opened his fridge one day and there was food outdated by nearly 12 months, especially meat, and I was quite concerned about him, you know, getting mixed up and maybe cooking that and getting quite ill. So with his permission, cleared out the fridge, and again, the ISA, we funded pest control to come out and do a full spray of the home, and that got rid of the nasty cockroaches.
So it made your visits easier.
It made my visits much easier. I wasn't panicking. But yeah, we were able to keep him at home for another 12 months. You know, his health deteriorated. There was some other issues, but he was very reluctant to go into aged care, and his goal was always to stay at home, and we'll support people in whatever it is that they want to do where physically possible. But he came to an agreement with myself and the medical team after another trip to hospital that it was time. It was time to move into permanent care. So look, we liaised with them, we helped him find the right aged care facility for him, and we actually helped with packing up some of his sentimental bits and moving them over there. And we visit him now.
Oh, that's awesome. I think as well, just, you know, from my own like remembering stories over the years, that it doesn't always have to be big things that you need, like pest control. Like that's an easy enough solution, you know, to organise. But I know that we've, you know, helped people out with curtains. Whenever they changed from analog TV to digital TV, some people had no TV then because they just had an analog one, and you know, so we got some TVs for people. Just simple little things like that can change a person's life.
Absolutely. Like, what's a small thing for us and relatively financially viable for us to do, you know, just around $120 for pest control. It's changed. It's made a huge change in his life, you know, and that's the thing, like our seniors, a lot of them live from pension to pension, you know, they don't have a lot of cash to spare, and they can't sometimes justify them spends. They may need that, but they can't justify that.
So moving on, Katerina, you touched a little bit on this earlier about families in Ireland. How do we give them support?
So often we may hear from the family in Ireland first, particularly in times of crisis. So if maybe their son or daughter have been hospitalised, they may have been arrested or incarcerated, or they may just be having some really tough personal difficulties. Two examples actually within the last 12 months that we had first heard of the client was through Concerned Mums back in Ireland. Was both males were experiencing acute psychosis. So both had actually been sectioned and hospitalised under the Mental Health Act. It wasn't safe for them to be living in the community, and neither had any intention to return to Ireland despite their family's wishes. So that was tough, but thankfully with the client's consent, that we were able to provide regular updates, and it was just such a relief for the family to know, okay, they've got someone here, they're looking out for them. And both these young men, weren't taking their medication, which they should have been doing. They didn't have ID, they'd been lost somewhere along the way. They were at risk of homelessness. One actually was homeless. No mobile phone, no money. So there is many different areas where we head for passports. We took the photos, we went to the bank with them once we had that ID to get bank cards sorted. We worked really closely with the social work team and then the mental health team within the community. And I have to say, they actually be quite surprised that there's a service like this on offer to the Irish community, and they're really relieved because it means we're actually able to do some of the things that they can't. They can't pay for a passport as much as they may want to. It's not within their role. So I think at some point over the course of the 12 months with both of these fellas, there was all of our staff and maybe one or two of our committee members that were supporting these gentlemen as well. But look,
and that doesn't happen 9 to 5 either.
No, we actually have our on-call service is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. So we may have family reaching out to us through our social media or through our website, and look, I'm happy to provide a call at convenient times, through WhatsApp to family back in Ireland, for that peace of mind. We try and be as flexible as we can be.
Okay, Katerina, so up until now I've let you off pretty easily. I've asked you all the stuff that you know, but all jokes aside, I'm sure there's parts of the job that you find difficult.
Yeah, look, when you provide outreach worker support, we provide support in a crisis, and no matter how many times you do it, it's still tough, emotionally. We've had some really sad cases over my time here and many before that. In particular, if there's a serious injury or illness, and even, sometimes we've sadly had deaths as well. So, we just try and do whatever we can in that time to make life a little bit easier or ease some of the burden, so that may be trying to help family back in Ireland get emergency flights out here. With their consent, we can deal with the social workers in the hospital. We can liaise with the police. And these cases as well are really tough on a support network in New South Wales. So friends are really feeling that burden. They may be young, they may be making big decisions or providing support in something that they've never come across before in life. So particularly when there's a death, that's really traumatic, that's really confronting. So we'll liaise with the police, the coroner, the funeral director, Kevin Bell Repatriation Trust, amazing
Where would we
connections.
be without them?
Where would we be without them, but and what I would say to anyone listening to this is, if you ever find yourselves in that position that nobody wants to be in, please just reach out, because you don't need to be figuring out them logistical things. We've been down that road before. We can take that burden off your hands. You just need to grieve, look out for each other, hold each other up.
It's a crazy time. And again, like I was saying earlier, it doesn't have to be the difficult things, but often parents might come out to Australia and have never been in this country before. Yeah. They don't know what an Opal card is to get to the hospital, or how to work a phone here, or those sorts of things. All the little things we can take care of, as well as the support side of things.
Absolutely. Like, everyone's going to have very personal needs and what they want, and it may be that, the parents of someone that's passed away would like a special mass here, and we'll do that for them. We've got them connections, we'll make that happen, because anything that's going to bring them a little bit of comfort in the worst time of their life, we're happy to provide that support.
One that I'll say that sticks with me was, I spoke to a mum in Ireland whose son was essentially in a coma here, and she said, please just stay with him. Don't leave him on his own until I get there.
Yeah.
That was her only wish.
Yeah.
She, she was strong, she could handle it, but she was like, do not leave him alone.
Yeah.
Always have somebody there. And she to this day is very thankful that we did do that for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a privilege to be able to offer that support.
Yeah, something as simple as that, just to be there.
Yeah, you never forget them names,
Yeah. So Katerina, our viewers today might be sitting back thinking, God, I'd love to be able to help out. I didn't know this existed. How could I help?
Well, we are, as I mentioned, a very small team of 4 staff members. So, there's often times where we're stretched in terms of our time and, our resources and finances. So we are always on the lookout for volunteers. It's a role that brings so much satisfaction to be able to work within your own community. So reach out to us directly through our website and we'll talk to you about what opportunities are available.
Yeah, and I think for volunteers, the great thing about volunteers is it doesn't matter who you are. You don't have to have the world's best skill set. We have some volunteers who are lawyers, we have volunteers who are immigration agents, we have volunteers who do the dishes at events. Everybody can help in some way or other.
Absolutely, as a volunteer of how many years that there's a job for everyone. Don't worry, we'll find you something 100%. To do.
So Katerina, you mentioned earlier that the ISA does receive some government funding, but it doesn't cover everything. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so we are funded by the DFA's Immigrant Support Programme. So we're really lucky to be one of the organisations funded by them, but that funding only covers 54% of our running costs.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's quite a lot it does not cover, and it does not cover any of our costs in terms of client financial assistance. So we will help out financially in many ways following an assessment. That could be anything from accommodation short term to food vouchers to essential items, to transport costs, to maybe utility bills if someone's really struggling. So I actually would dread to imagine where some of our clients would be if we weren't able to actually help them out financially in the short term. And it's a pretty scary thought, if we aren't able to do that coming into the future.
Okay, Katerina, so you've thrown out a couple of numbers today that's kind of sticking in my head. It's just like the 60 clients per month, and then only 54% is what's, what we get to help towards running costs.
Yeah.
How does the rest of it sort of work then?
Yeah, so firstly, we are so grateful to the Immigrant Support Programme for that 54%, but that's a huge portion that is not covered. And I think the important thing to point out firstly is our funding that we receive from DFA is on an annual basis.
Yeah.
That funding is not guaranteed into the future. We've been very fortunate to now, and we hope that will continue. But it is a great concern that in the future we may not have access to all of that funding that we have been getting to date. So we rely so heavily on donations from the community and fundraising events and opportunities that happen throughout the year as well.
So just so I'm clear then, so the 46% then for the running costs that's lacking comes from donations and events. Absolutely. And then all of the money that we go towards helping and assisting all the people also comes from donations and events. Absolutely.
So that's a pot that we need to fill up every year, and we're so grateful to the community for events that they run for us. So that may be anything from a swim to maybe a cycle or a golf day or a barbecue. And I just ask the community to keep in mind as to they may need our help in the future, or maybe we've supported them in the past, and if we can maybe be their charity of choice for something like that, you know, every dollar adds up. It doesn't have to be a huge event, you know. All of the small events are so greatly supported and appreciated.
Yeah, and I suppose businesses can get involved as well, can't they?
Absolutely. Look, we are really proud to say that we have now got sponsorship opportunities for business. So just reach out to us directly and you'll be able to see the different packages that are on offer there. And you know, the Irish community and businesses have been fantastic in supporting us in the past, and this is something that they can do into the future on an annual basis.
Yeah.
It's really easy.
Yeah, and I know that we still get the little envelopes and a little check in the post from some of our, you know, some of our elderly. They send in their annual donation to us, so it doesn't matter how big or how small, it all goes into that pot that you
It all goes into that pot, and $2 or more is tax deductible, so everybody keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. Okay, Katerina, thank you very much for everything today. Before we go, tell me, what is your quick top 5 takeaways from today?
Okay, so first thing is please keep us in mind for your tax deductible donations.
Over $2, yeah.
Over $2, yeah. Second thing is, if you or someone you know owns a business, please keep us in mind for sponsorship opportunities. You can reach out to us directly and we'll talk to you about them. Third thing is, if you have social media, please like our pages and keep up to date with what we're doing and what events that we have coming up.
Share and like
and share. And you can find everything on our website as well, irishsupportagency.org.au. Fourth thing is, consider becoming a member. It's really important that we increase our membership within the community, and that's another avenue for you to meet others within the community. Fifth thing is, spread the word about the ISA. Ask your friends, ask your colleagues, have you heard of the Irish Support Agency? Do you know what they do? If not, get them involved.
Great job. And as you said, anything else you need, it's all on the website.
Absolutely.